When fictional harm feels real, rethinking legal boundaries in virtual abuse. This essay begins by posing the central question of why some forms of fictional harm, such as AI-generated child sexual abuse material, CSAM, or avatar-based sexual abuse in the metaverse, are treated as criminal or socially dangerous, while others, like fictional violence in video games, remain legally protected. It highlights the increasing relevance of virtual environments and AI-generated media to contemporary legal debates and argues that the distinction often hinges not on the presence of real victims or empirical evidence of harm, but on perceived social risk and moral judgment. This sets the stage for a critical examination of how different fictional harms are treated under law and ethics. Fictional violence, particularly in video games, has long been the subject of public concern, but has consistently received legal protection, especially in jurisdictions like the United States. Courts have ruled that violent content is a form of free expression, and empirical studies have failed to establish a consistent, causal link between playing violent games and committing real-world violence. As a result, the legal standard demands strong evidence of direct harm before any restrictions are justified. This has reinforced the view that fictional violence is abstract and does not warrant intervention, even if it is graphic or disturbing. In contrast, AI-generated CSAM is widely criminalized, despite the absence of real victims, based on the assumption that such material is inherently harmful. Lawmakers argue that it can encourage deviant behavior, normalize abuse, and create demand for illegal content involving actual children. The legal approach is precautionary, it prioritizes the potential for harm and the moral imperative to protect children over the need for conclusive scientific proof. This reflects a broader legal trend of treating sexual harm involving minors as uniquely dangerous, even in fictional or synthetic forms. Avatar-based sexual abuse in the metaverse is increasingly seen as a serious issue due to the immersive nature of virtual environments and users' deep psychological identification with their avatars. Users often perceive their avatars as extensions of their real selves, especially when those avatars reflect their gender or appearance, leading to experiences of harassment or assault that feel personally violating. The concept of meta-rape is introduced, to describe sexual violence mediated through avatars, with a focus on the embodied trauma users may feel. The argument parallels that of AI CSAM, that perceived harm, even in a virtual setting, can be as real and traumatic as physical harm, especially for vulnerable populations like women and girls. This legal and ethical framework, however, reveals an inconsistency. While avatar-based abuse and AI-generated CSAM are treated as serious issues based on perceived or potential harm, fictional violence continues to be legally tolerated due to the absence of definitive evidence linking it to real-world violence. This disparity suggests a moral hierarchy in which sexual harm, particularly involving children or gendered abuse, is treated as more serious than violent harm, even when both occur in virtual or fictional settings. The inconsistency raises questions about whether legal protections are grounded in consistent principles or shaped more by cultural values and political sensitivities. As virtual environments become more complex and immersive, legal systems will need to confront the challenge of regulating harms that are experiential rather than physical. Determining when and how to intervene requires balancing the risks of moral overreach with the need to protect users from genuine trauma. Factors such as the degree of user identification with avatars, the realism of interactions, and the responsibilities of platforms will be central to shaping future legal standards. The essay suggests that legal recognition of virtual harm should not rely solely on moral panic or assumed trauma, but instead develop clear criteria that consider both subjective experience and broader societal implications. In closing, the essay argues that the legal response to fictional harm is often inconsistent, driven more by perceived social threats and emotional urgency than by empirical evidence or coherent legal principles. While caution is justified in cases involving vulnerable populations, a more principled and balanced approach is needed to assess harms in virtual and fictional contexts. The goal should be to develop legal standards that are both protective and logically consistent, ensuring that similar types of harm are treated with equal scrutiny regardless of their emotional or moral resonance.